This is an open letter to the Sane Society. Bravo, the Sane Society, because apparently I don't have free speech. It's apparently, I heard on the radio that somebody who was not a citizen of Uncle Sam was in a couple of them already have been in a couple of their leadership have been imprisoned and I guess deported because they were speaking. They had a different geopolitical position in Uncle Sam's land than that it was in opposition to the current holders of executive power. The current holders of executive power's idea in Uncle Sam's land is apparently if you hold an opposing view, then our official views, with regards to, for example, international matters, if you have a different view than our official State Department view, and if you're not a citizen, then we will really kick your ass. And I'm like, okay, I hereby retreat and white flag. You won't hear anymore from me, Uncle Sam's managers, because up to this point I thought I had the right to free speech. In fact, I'm sure I was talking to an FBI agent, and I'm sure they record all our conversations. So the last conversation I had with an FBI agent, clearly they have a record of this, that I clearly asked that, hey, do I have the right to free speech? And the gentleman said, yes, you do. Clearly he said, yes, I do have the right to free speech. But apparently not according to the current folks who are in power in 2025, in March of 2025. So according to the new interpretation of the law, those who are not citizens don't have the right to free speech. And this is clearly the opposite of this is clearly the opposite of what my assumption has been up to this point based on my last conversation with the FBI agent. One FBI agent, I don't know, one of the guys. He said, you do have the right to free speech. I clearly asked him, and I'm sure they have it on record, that they said, you do have a right to free speech. And he knew everything about me. So I was going based on that assumption of the law. Now, if the new law is, if you're not a citizen, no, you don't have the right to free speech, then okay, this is going to be my last video. Hopefully I can hold my tongue for the rest of my life. So, but I should mention that I don't have a favorite side. I hate everybody equally. I love everybody equally. Salute. I love everybody equally, so I punched right as many times as I punch left and behind. So I have been, so nobody can accuse me of being on one side or the other, because I don't have a favorite side. So I thought, but in this my last video, as a proof of that, this is a punch to the left, that the left, the Mr. John Stewart's side, Mr. Mr. I don't know, Mrs. Pelosi's side, Mr. Schumer's side. Here's the thing, with regards to, this is a punch to those folks. I'm sorry, but here's what I see, that these guys may be doing something for the better. Department of Education. Well, it wasn't clear that the education of your children have been better than the 1950s or 60s. I don't know what the 1950s, 60s was. 70s, still there is people had some sense of geography and history and some information, loaded with some information, at least people who graduated from high school. They were loaded with a lot of information, so they understood the weight of their being. So many of them, had good lives because they were intelligent, they were wise to the world, so they had a peaceful life. It seems your Department of Education was not doing its job recently. How is it that 50, 60 years ago people had more information about the world around them, had traveled more and seen more places than they are today? So education has not been something that the Department of Education was doing better year after year. In fact, it was doing worse year after year by bringing down the standards, because God forbid you have to slap Joe around a little to make him read a little faster. I don't know, or whatever you have to do, whatever you've been doing, your Department of Education, whatever its modus operandi is, however it's dictating that education must be done, apparently it's not working. Apparently it's not working because, dude, you come across adults of this educational system, not very reasonable adults at that. So that means if you end up with an unreasonable adults in a society, understand that the educational system that brought about these unreasonable adults must be a very, not very good educational system, because you have ended up with unreasonable adults. i.e., when you end up getting eaten in the jungles of Amazon by a native tribe, you understand that their education was not good enough to, prohibit them from cannibalism. So you end up on their dinner plate, although you stand up and walk and talk with them, try to reason with them. When reasonableness goes out of adults, that means they weren't educated well. So they're not reasonable. That's the tribe in Amazon. Again, you can't import your society from other societies who take the time to educate their population. It's sort of like, yeah, we don't want to spend the money to educate our population. Why don't we just import adults from other populations? Why don't we, kind of make life miserable on the other side of the planet so we can import their adult population? We are not reproducing much ourselves, and okay, let's make life over there miserable so we can bring them over here, and then you end up with another group of folks who come into power and says, No, no, you want to go back? Fuck you. Some of them go in, start wars over there, and to create some kind of income from frontier-based economy, create some kind of war, and because of that war, a lot of native people over there have to go to these people's land. And now, as immigrants, as refugees, as asylum seekers, go to these people's land. And then another government comes in and say, oh, why so many of these motherfuckers are here, these brown and black people? What happened? Oh, we supported a couple of wars in their neighborhood and we made a lot of money, but we don't want their people. If we liked their people, we would have left them alone over there. No, we went in and kicked some ass. We made some money, and then we pulled out. We had our fun, and then we pulled out. And then, but you weren't expecting the people that you fucked. You weren't expecting to see them as your neighbors. Well, you fuck them over there. They run to the safety of over here. What do you want? You keep changing your governments, and one creates refugee, and another one hates refugee. One creates refugee, the other one hates refugees. Well, if you create them, you should expect them. I mean, you can't put Venezuela under economic sanction and then scream why so many Venezuelans want to come to Miami. You can't do that. It's sort of like you're banging your own hand with a hammer. You're doing economic sanction, and then the pain that you're feeling of illegal Venezuelan immigrants. Well, the pain you're feeling is because of the hammer that you're hitting your hand with. You're causing your own pain. Stop sanctioning them because they're not giving enough of the share of the pie. They're not getting enough, enough action. They're not getting enough piece of the action from the current Venezuelan government. You want a Venezuelan government who you can get the proper piece of action. And who determines what is the proper piece of action for Exxon and Mobil? Well, the board of trustees of Exxon and Mobil determine what is the appropriate amount of piece of action that they will accept, and no less. And then Uncle Sam goes in to enforce that, and he said, no, you're not giving Exxon and Mobil enough of piece of the action of your oil. We don't accept this deal. You have to sell it cheaper to these guys so they can make more money off your oil. And Venezuelans are saying, no, fuck you, at this price or nothing. And suddenly Venezuela becomes the geopolitical nemesis. Why? Because they don't want to give out their oil to Exxon and Mobil. Either you give out, you wholesale your life to us for 2 cents, or we don't have a deal, or you're going to be under sanctions until you agree to play ball. And that is make Exxon and Mobil more rich than they already are. This is simple matter that your Department of Education hasn't taught any of this. Institute of Peace. You have Elon Musk just, Mr. Trump, President Trump, just dismantled Institution of Peace. You had an Institution of Peace as an organization? Like your Department of Education. This is a misnomer. Whatever was doing, it wasn't peaceful. Right now you have ongoing wars, which are, let's face it, they're wars because Uncle Sam's managers and Uncle Sam's machinery are there currently. That's the only reason there are war there, because if the Ukrainians didn't have the machinery, it's over. The Russians will want what the Russians want because they have found out that they can't trust you. You want to push the borders of this, EU farther into Russian land, Slavic land, or land that is geopolitically important to Russia, like Cuba is geopolitically important to United States, or Bermuda, or Bahama, or Freddie Martin. These are all geopolitically important pieces that Uncle Sam is very sensitive about. We saw that the Cuban Missile Crisis. Anybody, it's so sensitive that you say, no, Greenland is ours, so is Canada, and Mexico, we're watching you, and we're going to kick some ass if you don't behave well. Then you're telling Moscow not to worry about Ukraine. You're telling the Russians not to worry about Ukraine. You're about to, swallow half your side of the planet out of geopolitical fear. So, and your Department of Education, because it hasn't done its job, so uninformed people are fearful people. And you can actually, propagandize the people into a war, and if they're not well educated, they buy the propaganda hook, line, and sinker. So, and the Department of Peace apparently is a misnomer, because you haven't done any piecing. You've been every time the profits of Chevron and Mobil have been cut a little by the natives, suddenly Uncle Sam's managers have gone to war on behalf of ExxonMobil and the rest of Wall Street. If the profits of Wall Street lowers a little, suddenly Uncle Sam's managers are ready to go to war. It's all about profits. And let's face it, it's all these wars around the world is fed by Uncle Sam's managers. Let's not kid ourselves. This institution of peace, I'm not sure what it's doing, because in Vietnam you killed until you just ran out of bullets to throw at these motherfuckers. In Korea, you're staying and holding to the land that the pink skins conquered in Asia, and you're holding the line, and you're bribing the South Koreans to stay there. When you have favorable trade agreement and you don't have to pay tax over here, everybody else has to pay import tax in the US except like South Korea. And those favorable trade deals, you're bribing South Koreans to hold on to Asian land in East Asia. The pink skins are bribing the South Koreans, economic bribe to South Koreans in order to, K-pop, pink skins allowing, some Korean dancers to earn money in the pink skin land. Or that's after LG and Samsung and all these favorable terms in order to TCMC in Taiwan, the only I'm not sure even I pronounced the initials are right, but it's a chip manufacturing plant, apparently a main one. That was a bribe to the Taiwanese, to these economic bribes to Taiwanese for Taiwan to remain a pink skin foothold. These are all racial matters that you're involved in. Racial wars. You're bribing some natives in order to give you a foothold so you can fight other natives. You're bribing some natives, like Filipino, you're bribing them to get a foothold so you can fight other natives from their little island. Do you understand? This is what you have in common. You're everywhere you're fighting the natives. Uncle Sam's managers, everywhere. You're fighting, all these wars are being fought with your ammunitions against the natives. Israel. This is not an anti-Semitic statement, but Israel is clear, as you know, as it's been told to us. I don't know, in my simulation that I hear and I see, in my simulation, this is clear. That, this is clear that arms are going from west, London, Paris, New York, DC, arms and weapons and money and everything is sent to Israel so Israelis can kill more natives. That's the same plan you have for the Chinese. When you occupy Taiwan, you have bases on Taiwan, on Japan, in Filipino, you have those bases so you can bring peace to the natives in China, and just like you have brought peace to the natives in Arabian Peninsula, Israel is bringing peace into Arabian Peninsula. Peace and quiet. I mean, you kill all of them, all you get is peace and quiet. Salute. Mr. John Stewart, you had an institution of peace. I didn't know that. And apparently they had to push the man in charge out of his chair. Apparently it was so comfortable that, that he was attached to the chair. He was ready to defend it with arms. But I'm not. The problem is, you had such an institution, and you have had like almost 75 years of non-stop war. I mean, since 100 years. Let's go until World War One. It's been more than 100 years that you have been in non-stop war on your planet, especially people white people. 200 years, 500. The last 500-600 years, first Europeans went and colonized, and then Uncle Sam's managers took the reign and they started colonizing. The Vietnam War was a leftover war from when the French had colonized the Vietnamese. The French handed over a broken colony, a colony which its native were resisting too much. Before there was Vietnam, there was Viet Minh. That's what the French used to call the Vietnamese guerrilla fighters. There was Viet Minh, and then the Americans became Viet Cong. The same thing. You took over these colonial projects that the Europeans had started. Okay, yes, there was a period of savage earth, and the Mongols were very savage. They just wanted to grab. They weren't in the business of running an empire. They were just in the business of just killing as much as they could. And the problem with the Mongols is they have nothing else, so they only eat meat and related product to meat. So killing and blood and gore is something they come across from as a child, because they have nothing else. The land is so worthless that they can't do much else except have cattle on it. So they have their diet is all meat related. So I guess a carnivore, those people on keto diet will do well to travel to Mongolia and be on Mongolian diet. So my point is this: the blood and gore that they're involved with all their life from childhood and have been their way of their tribes makes them very very cold and easy. Blood is no problem for them. Spilling blood was killing animals, humans. Who when you kill so many, you become accustomed to killing so many animals. You can eventually become you can much more easily become accustomed to killing humans if you're very much accustomed in killing animals. The whole process, the gore and the blood and all of that. The point is this: that beside the Mongols, the rest of the Asians, and they had some major wars, but remember, those major wars were during thousands of years. There was one war. Mostly it was peaceful. We only read about the wars, but we don't realize that there was, like, for a couple of hundred years, it was peaceful until a stupid guy became in charge, and then there was war. Whether the stupid guy came in charge was was from in a lower place, wanted to be in a higher place, or the white guy was in a higher place and he was incompetent to keep the peace. Imagine, incompetence brings war. Speaking of incompetence, they have I don't know how else to say this, but in a way, the Israelis have made America incompetent in a way that it can't do really much, because this is one issue. It's sort of like South Africa. Israel is a mix of South Africa and Vietnam. Israel is a mixture of South Africa and Vietnam. There are white Europeans who have settled, and but the war situation is on a daily basis, and they also want to expand. I think South Africa had at one time proper border, but Israel never really had proper borders, because Israel keeps has pushed the natives out and grabbed the whole piece of land, and doesn't even want them in townships or reservations or doesn't want them there, just continuously, because the arms supply is continuous. Israel war ends in one day if there are no arms supply to Israel. End of story. Israel war can end tomorrow. Israel as a country will go away tomorrow as a country, not as people. People stay. Governments change. Systems, like when we say Israel eventually will go away, it's like a kind of like South Africa kind of way. It's sort of like, some of them are going to stay, the hard-nosed ones are going to stay, like white people who are still living in South Africa. These are the hard-nosed ones who actually own some land that they think is worth a lot of money. So these are, I had a South African mechanic. He was a diesel mechanic, a nice guy, very nice guy. He was mobile, and he was introduced by one of the mechanic shops near me, and he was mobile, a South African guy, white guy from South Africa, and he fixed my skid steer. And I had an issue with it, major issue. He had to pull the I watched. We had to pull the engine out and replace, or actually tighten, replace or tighten it. The main gear apparently become undone. Anyway, my point is this: he was very nice, gentleman. Although diesel mechanic, but he was gentleman. He was well read, informed. There is nothing wrong with white people from South Africa, but the whole idea that some of them are still left there is sort of like, these are not my diesel mechanic guy. He didn't have a great ranch over there, so as soon as we see, okay, black people in charge, I don't really agree with their decisions, or they don't agree with me, I don't agree with them. Let's see if we can find a better life. Apparently he went to Brazil, and he lived in Brazil for a couple of decades or at least a decade, and found out Brazil is life is not as good as it could be. So he eventually found his way to America, and I'm sure he's legal, but nobody will ever bother ask him because he's white. So and nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. But the point is this: it's sort of like, if you're white, you're beyond suspicion of being illegal. So what does that mean? In another way of reading this is that brown existence is illegal here unless they have official papers from us. Brown exists. When they don't stop white people and ask for immigration papers, is just like saying, it's the exact definition of saying that only brown people have to prove to us that we agreed with their existence here within these borders. We, the rich white folks, have to agree to which brown people we want here and which brown people we don't want here. We, the rich white people, have to agree, with anybody's existence here. And we start by saying that if you exist here at our pleasure, okay, in that case, we don't give you the right to have free speech. And I accept that. Okay. Up to this point, I was under a different assumption. Now that it's clear that I don't have the right to free speech, I will stop my free speech. No problem. Here's to Uncle Sam. One more institution that Mr. Trump has decided to close down is VOA. Well, here's the thing. NPR was defining VOA as this institution that was erected to fight Russian propaganda. With propaganda. Well, Russian propaganda ended some time ago. But the VOA propaganda never stopped. And this propaganda is, the whole idea of propaganda is to create instability in other places. Like BBC says, we bring you the truth. On NPR I was listening, some lady came and says, yes, when these news that we cover in different languages all over the world is so their citizens can hear the truth. I'm sorry, you have a trademark on the truth? Mrs. BBC, you are the truth teller? You motherfuckers who went and did this you motherfuckers who taught colonialism to Uncle Sam, you have the trademark on the truth? No, the whole point of BBC and VOA is to ferment resentment. I believe it's the right word, ferment. To create resentment, to inflame the natives of those areas. First, gain their trust. BBC is not all lies. It's 80% truth with 20% lie squeezed in there. 80% truth, 20% lie. That's BBC. So, and those lies are pushed in there in order to create resentment in local population, in order to break them down, have some kind of international wars or civil wars, so we, the owners of BBC and VOA, we can keep our place safe and sound while those places go to war. So relative to those places, because our place is safe, everybody will bring their money to us. What they didn't see or didn't care to see is that, and a lot of their people will also follow their money to you. A lot of their people then they have children, and then you can't tell them that no, their children cannot be citizens. Although they've been living in your country for 3-4 generations now. No citizens. You chased them out of their home. You ended up in your place, and they're not citizens. They can't talk. They're illegal. They're although our policies push them. What policies? The policies that VOA is pushing. The policies that we bring you the truth. The truth of what? The truth from whose perspective? You brought the truth, ExxonMobil and Chevron and Mr. Warren Buffett and Mr. Goldman Sachs and Mr. JP Morgan. These are your truths. BlackRock, Jeffrey Epstein, these are your truths. It has got so bad that sort of like I don't think VOA, just like BBC, is not doing a great thing, because literally it has 20% propaganda in it, and BBC has the most number of news for the most number of languages around the world. It's sort of like they feel everybody should know our view. Everybody should know the British view about things. Why? Why? Why everybody should hear the British view? Why everybody should even hear the British view if they can't speak English? No problem. The BBC has the most news in the most number of languages. Everybody has to know the British view, even if they don't want it don't know English, we will translate our view, our perspective to their language and communicate with them, send it over the airwaves and send it over the internet. However, we gotta get to them. We're going to let them know about our view. Salute. And here is Uncle Sam's managers that are saying that, yeah, we don't want to hear any brown people's views. We only want to hear BBC's views. So everybody else, shut the fuck up. No free speech, especially if you're not a citizen. Fuck you. No free speech. You don't have the right to talk. Yes, sir. I will not talk. And we all will listen to VOA. I will not talk, or BBC, or whoever we're supposed to listen to. I will not talk, and we all listen to whoever you tell us to listen to. Yes, sir. To the Sane Society.